Hi there, and welcome back to In Pursuit 360. We're continuing our series on how to become a police officer, and today we're going to be talking about the application process for how to become a police officer. All right, so here we go. How to become a police officer, the application process. Now, this process is pretty well going to be generic across most law enforcement agencies in the country. The only time you might see an exception maybe would be in some smaller rural departments. As an example, when I first applied with the Stafford County Sheriff's Office, it was an interview, physical agility test, and the sheriff said yay or nay. That's even changed for them now. So the application process that we're going to go over today is going to be a generic overview of what most agencies are looking for in their process, or what they do for their hiring process. And later we will take each section of that process and break it down. So, of course, application process always starts with your application. Most of the time you can find these online. Some of them will allow you to complete them online and submit them digitally. Some of them will make you print them out, fill them out, and mail them in, or go turn them in by hand. A lot of times they will offer the possibility of including a resume, or they will request a resume. So, of course, if you look at the application itself, it's going to ask you, your name, your date of birth, your address, your previous address, your work history, references. So you're going to fill all that out. And be very careful with this. You need to be 100% completely honest on your application and on your resume, because they are going to check. This is not a freebie. You don't get to fudge anything and think it's going to squeak on by, because it won't. So your very first step is filling out the actual application and submitting a resume. Now, if this is going to be your first real job or your first professional job, maybe after college, or not all departments require college, so you may have worked a couple of years, let's say at Walmart or at McDonald's, put that down, and you need to create a resume. There's always something that you can pull from any job experience that you've had, or even a college experience, that you can add onto a resume that is going to show what's going to make you a valuable member of the law enforcement community. So let's say it's Walmart. It will show, you can show in your resume that you worked in customer service. And in dealing with customer service, you dealt with a wide variety of people who were upset about a product that they purchased that didn't work right, or how you resolved that issue, how you resolved the complaint about an employee that wasn't very helpful. So there's value from every job that you've done that can be shown on a resume. But we'll cover resumes later. I'll even I have an offer for you for resumes, but we'll cover that later. All right, so you fill out the application, you send it in with your resume, and next thing is you may be invited to come take a test. So it'll be a written test. The post test is pretty standard. You can Google online and ask for sample post test questions, and that'll give you an idea of what you're looking at. When you show up to this, you want to be, sometimes they'll tell you how to dress, sometimes they won't, because they want to see how you're going to dress. This needs to be at least business casual, unless they tell you that they want you in business attire. Sometimes they may run the post test and the physical agility test at the same time. They'll come in, take your test. If you pass, then you take the physical agility test. Some of them run them separate. Some of them will run the post test, the physical agility test, and your interview all on the same day. So that part varies, but the sections of this are all the same. So you'll come in and take your post test. It's some pretty generic math, some memorization. They'll have you read like a scenario in the beginning, and then it'll ask you some questions, like, if you have a speeding car that's doing 100 miles an hour and you're trying to overtake it and it's a mile ahead of you. How fast do you have to go to catch the car in 5 minutes or whatever? And so, keep up on your math skills. And again, you can get some of these sample questions so you can practice. So post-test, then you have physical agility test. Now, usually you can go on a department's website and look, and they will tell you what their physical agility test is. Some agencies go with like an Army standard fitness test, which has to do with push-ups, sit-ups, vertical jump, and a short run. The Pentagon used to be, the hiring physical agility test was the same as FLETC's physical agility test, the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, which has to do with a shuttle run, a bench press, a percentage of your body weight, a 1.5 mile run. Time is based on age and sex. And what else? Oh, and your vertical stretch, how your vertical or your reach. So sitting down on the floor in a box and reaching out to your toes, and how far can you go, and that's also based on age and gender. So that's the FLETC standard, and they use that for their hiring process. So the physical agility test, I know the Stafford Sheriff's Office, I'm not sure what it is right now, I haven't looked, but when I was there, the standard was there was a 99-yard obstacle run. You had to go over a 6-foot wooden fence, a 6-foot chain link fence. You had to do a dummy drag, and you also had to complete a distance run. So the physical agility test will kind of vary. So make sure to look at the department's website. Ask somebody. It doesn't hurt to ask. So you need to make sure you stay in good physical condition. You need to be able to run, and you don't have to be the strongest person out there. You need to have some decent endurance, and you need to have some reasonable strength. The one thing that never changes is the age of the bad guys. Most violence that's committed against the police officers tends to be from like 18 to 26-year-olds, which is fine maybe when you get into the career field at 23, 25. But the problem is that you can handle it now, you're 23 or 25. So 5 years from now, you're 28, 32. Or 10 years, you're 35. Well, the bad guys are still 18 to 25 or 18 to 26 years old. So you're going to keep getting older. The bad guys are going to stay the same age. So physical conditioning is extremely important, and that's what they want to know. Are you in decent shape? Are you able to handle yourself? And that's what the physical agility test is really all about. They're not looking for the super people, Superman, Superwoman, whatever. They want to know that you're able to, that you have the endurance to be able to hang on. If you get into a situation, do you have that endurance to hang on until backup gets there? So another step in the application process that's becoming a really big thing is the psychological test. This is about a 300 question test. It's not really 300 questions, it's 100 questions, all of them worded 3 different ways. Do you love your mother? And then later on it'll say, do you like your mother? And then it'll say something like, is there a particular reason why you hate your mother? So it's the same basic question asking about your feelings about your mother or whatever, just phrased in different ways to see if your answer is going to stay consistent. So this is a psychological test. That's becoming a lot more common these days. And then we go on to the polygraph. Do not sit here and think that you are going to cheat the polygraph. There are no tips or tricks. The best piece of advice for a polygraph test is just be honest. It's just like everything else in law enforcement. Be honest. Don't lie. Don't try to cheat it. Don't sit there and try to make something up. Don't try to convince yourself that something didn't happen a certain way. If something happened, you just need to tell them. Have you ever smoked marijuana? Yes. How often do you smoke it? Well, when I was 13, I was a little pothead, so at least once or twice a week. Those were my answers. I was a little pothead when I was 13. I smoked marijuana on a pretty regular basis with all my buddies. We would skip school, run across the street, go buy a nickel bag, and smoke it all up during the day, sneak back across the street, get on the school bus, go home. And then raid the refrigerator, of course, because of the munchies. So if you've done something, you need to tell them up front, because they are going to find out. There's no hiding it. There's no BSing your way through it. Just be honest. They can forgive a lot. What they want to know is, have you grown up since then? They're also going to send you a packet for a background investigation. So it's going to be this big long pack, and they're going to be looking for 10, 15 years going back, depending on what department or agency you're looking at. And they are going to want to know where you lived, what you did, who you hung out with, all your work history, all your residential history, who were your neighbors, and anything else. So make sure you tell them everything, because they're going to go out and talk to these people, and they will do it. So your average hiring time for any law enforcement agency, a decent sized law enforcement agency, is 6 to 9 months. It is not a quick process. The smaller, more rural departments where they only have 5 or 10 people working there, or they only hire 1 or 2 people every couple of years, they may go a little bit faster because it's a small town, small area. They may not go into as much detail, or it's easier for them to go into that detail because of the nature of the area of where they're getting their applicants from. So just be honest. Don't try to play any games with these people. And when you talk to your background investigator, if they ask something, if you honestly forgot to add it onto your background package, just tell them, hey, I accidentally forgot that. This is why. Oh, I hadn't thought about that person for years. I've had no contact with them. When was the last time you smoked marijuana? I was probably about 14 years old. I haven't touched it since. I don't associate with anybody that uses it anymore. Again, as long as you're honest and you don't play games, you'll be okay. Now, I can tell you that there are some things that are automatic outs, usually anything that would have been considered a felony. So if you're in your early teens and you do something stupid, they're more likely to possibly forgive that. But if you're 18, 17, 18, 19, 20 years old and you commit a burglary that would have been a felony, chances are a decent-sized department anyway is not going to pick you up. Now, you may be able to get into a smaller rural department where they may decide to give you a chance, but some of these bigger agencies or even the medium-sized departments, if you've done anything as an adult that would be considered a felony, they're probably not going to pick you up. If you've done any kind of drug that would be considered a felony, cocaine, LSD, acid, crack cocaine, you do any of those, that's an automatic out. They're probably not going to mess with you. And these are the medium to larger departments. Now, some of the smaller rural ones, again, as long as it's not hallucinogenic or something like that may come back later on you, they may give you a chance. But the medium to larger departments, anything that would have been a felony is going to be an out. So then comes the interview. So you've done everything else. You've done your background. You've done all that stuff. Now they're going to call you in for an interview. Wear a suit. Even if they say business casual, let your business casual be a suit. Dress to impress. This is not a time to be humble. This is a time to sell yourself. Be ready for those tough questions like, why do you want to be a law enforcement officer? Why this department? Why did you choose this agency? So do a little research. Get online, Google the department, go to their website, look at their history. Who was the last chief? Who was the last sheriff? What are some new policies? What have been some things that they've been in the news for? One of the famous questions at the Pentagon was, what do you know about the Pentagon Police or the Pentagon Force Protection Agency? And we expected people that wanted to work there to go to the website and read the history. The Pentagon Police were created after 9/11 in answer to being able to protect the Pentagon and its infrastructure and its people after the attacks on 9/11, realizing that there needed to be a more beefy security force there in order to protect that, because it's the headquarters of our military. So we expected people to do a little research and understand where they were trying to work. So I would recommend that. Do some research on the agency you're going to. Be prepared to ask the question of my two favorites. What is one of your strengths? And what is one of your weaknesses? Also, another sample question will be something like, name a time or a situation where you felt pressured or you were stressed, and how did you deal with that, and how did you end up working that problem out? That's a famous one because they want to know, how did you deal with a stressful situation in real life? Now, go back to working at McDonald's or back to Walmart or wherever, or even if you never really worked in a job like that and you were in college and you belonged to some social group where you had to have been in a situation that induced stress, and there had to be a way you reacted to it. Even if you didn't react well, go ahead and tell the story and let them know how you did and what you learned from that experience. So even if you didn't deal with that situation well, you can say, I didn't handle it exactly right, but I did learn that in the future, I would look at this and I would try to do that. So you've learned from that situation. We'll go over some of these questions in more detail, give you some ideas on how to answer them and that kind of thing. So then the next thing, hopefully after your interview, is you get that call. We'd like to offer you a position. That's the basic application process for most law enforcement agencies. So, hit that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, write some comments down below, let me know what else you'd like to see, any other specific details or anything like that. And thank you for coming to In Pursuit 360. You'll have a good day, have a safe day, and I'll catch you next time.